Inspiration sparks and raises our vibration, encouraging all of us to live our best lives. It is now my pleasure to welcome our speaker for this evening, Elaine Hager. Elaine will be serving Spirit and us with an inspirational reading and address this evening. Elaine is a graduate of the University of Metaphysical Sciences, where she earned a Master's of Divinity degree and a PhD in metaphysics. She currently serves as a trustee on the SCoA board. She is an ordained minister, a spiritual healer, and medium. She teaches spiritual philosophy and theology throughout the United States. Her life mission is to help others progress and help others who seek spiritual progress. A warm Harmony Harbor welcome to Elaine.
Hello, everyone. So good to see you. I'm so glad that some of you were able to stay on from our mediumship gathering, and I welcome you here with loving thoughts and loving intentions. The reading that I've chose today is from a book called The Science of Mind, the definitive edition, A Philosophy of Faith, A Way of Life by Ernest Homes. Thought is an inner movement, which is largely the result of one's perception of life and his reaction to it. Every time this movement takes place, it takes place within mind, upon cause and according to law. We are dealing with the same power that molds the planets and all that is upon them, and the limit of our ability to use this power is not in principle, but in our understanding of it. We are dealing with a neutral, creative power, just as would be in the case of electricity or any other natural force. It is on a higher plane, for it is the power of intelligence. Our thought, in its externalization, will reach its own level, just as water reaches its own level by its own weight and without effort. This is in line with necessity for the universe, in order to be at all, must be self-sufficient and self-existent. By the self-existence of the universe is meant a universe which is its own reason for being, a universe which exists by virtue of itself being all. Each one of us today is the result of the use he has made of the law, either consciously or unconsciously. As soon as we realize this, we shall see that what we are now, or what we now have as experience, is the result of what we have thought. And the answer to what we shall be is contained in what we are now thinking. For we can change our thinking. Man thinks and supposes that he lets go of those thoughts, that he is finished with them. But such is not the case. For thought becomes subjectified in mind, like a seed planted in the soil, and unless neutralized, it stays there and determines the attraction and repulsion in the experience of the one thinking. There is a constant action on the subjective side of life, and it is the unconscious process which decides what is going to happen in the outer experience. Whatever we think, act, believe in, feel, visualize, vision, image, read, and talk about, in fact, All processes which affect or impress us at all are going into the subjective state of our thought, which is our individualized use of universal mind. Whatever goes into the subjective state of our thought tends to return again as some condition. So we, and we alone, control our destiny. And today, I want to talk to you about governing life. The power of the universe is governed by its own creation of laws, which some of us may know as universal laws or natural laws. The natural laws are neutral. For instance, gravity doesn't care whether an apple or a brick is dropped. They're both subject to the same law. They're both going to fall down. They don't fall up. Electricity doesn't judge or make a decision whether or not to work depending on the intent of its usage. Electricity works regardless of who flips the switch. Electricity simply goes where it's wired to go. It doesn't care if it's directed to provide light to a room or to turn on a stove. Likewise for all that's operational in the world. And in that, there's a constancy that can be depended upon, even though sometimes we would like to bend those laws, those natural laws, and sometimes we wish it wasn't so. But the constancy remains. It's there. When a person thinks, the thinking is initially generated from an intelligence that is neutral. The thinking can be thought of as a manifestation of the ever-flowing, ever-present universal life source that permeates one's inner being. One can choose to watch the thought pass by without judgment or interpretation, and without any attachment to it, or not. Conversely, one can choose to attach to the thought and become emotionally charged in it. This state of conscious thinking, the development of living with a conscious ability to be able to accept or reject thoughts at will, is a major step toward a peaceful and happy, joyous, blissful life. So, why does it seem like it's hardly practiced? What drives the attachments to thoughts? While the thought itself originates in an objective atmosphere or a neutral environment, it's filtered through a subjective or opinionated environment, the brain. And many of us have encountered individuals who don't use their filters or brains very well. The causation of the individual to move from an objective way of processing information to a subjective way of processing information is developed by beliefs, ideas, values, opinions, and rules. This is what channels thoughts into becoming subjective. We put the spin on them, even though they're just passing thoughts, and we can leave them where they show up. The next step in the process is the application of power that is directed to the thought. That is the charge that's applied to the thought. And like electricity, it goes where it's directed to go. Thoughts are things, and they go where they're sent. At any given time, one can choose to redirect the thought Send it in another direction. Discharge the power applied to it. Let it go, or change it at one's will. You are the power source of thought. Thoughts have all the fluidity of the power of creation, and that power can be molded into whatever it is that one desires. There's no shortage of infinite power. The ultimate origin of infinite power remains unknown. But what is known is that it appears to be self-generating and is readily available to any and all at any given moment one calls upon it. I'm talking about whatever term you use to call God, infinite intelligence, Allah, whatever the God of your understanding is. Living in conscious awareness of the factors that influence your thinking is a huge step toward your ability to cast aside any thinking that inhibits you from being all you can be. Remember what was said about the neutrality of the universal laws? If you can harness an understanding of those laws, ultimately you can create the life you desire. Earlier, I spoke about the circumstances that affect thinking, beliefs, ideas, values, opinions, and rules. Let's start with rules. Rules, if they align with the universal laws, can be positive, but self-imposed rules that keep a person trapped in an existence that causes disquiet needs to be adjusted. The same reasoning applies to opinions. Initially, beliefs, ideas, and values are the consequence of the environment to which one is exposed. The social and familial environment that you were exposed to directly influences how you formed your thinking. You were born, most of you, I'm assuming, were born in the Western Hemisphere. Had you been born to another place on the earth, your beliefs and your values may be very different from what they are today. And those who you followed, your parents and grandparents and so on and so forth, also followed the generations before them. This is how social and particularly generational family patterns are created. Remember the story about the person who cut the ends off the roast beef? And the children, and she cooked a wonderful roast beef. And then the children always, when they made roast beef, they cut the ends off of the roast beef. And it went on generationally like that until somebody finally asked the grandmother why she cut the ends off of the roast beef. Somebody questioned it. And she said because that was the way it could fit in the pot. There was no rhyme or reason to it other than that. While some beliefs, ideas, and values, opinions, and rules are favorable, some are not, just like thoughts. Those that are not influencing your life in a positive way can be changed. And the key to changing them is awareness. In order to change, one must first become aware that a value, a belief, an opinion, an idea, or a rule is no longer self-serving. I know for a long time, every time I would get tired and be exhausted, I would push myself harder and harder come on, you can do this. What's wrong with you? Why are you being so weak? And I realized that, wait a minute, that wasn't my tape that I was playing inside my head. That was the story that I was told ever since I was a young child. And that's when I started to learn how to become kinder to myself. It wasn't my tape I was playing. It was my father's tape. Again, in order to change, one must first become aware that a value, a belief, an opinion, an idea, or a rule is no longer self-serving. Maybe it never was. Most of the time when that happens, it's because one's life is being impacted in a way that is viewed as negative. Again, living life in conscious awareness or choosing to pay attention to the more subtle energies of creation is the beginning of a more fulfilling life. In his book, The Supreme Philosophy of Man, Alfred Montepert wrote, "Here is the crux, the core of life. As you think, so you are. Life is not determined by outward acts or circumstances. Each of us creates life, his own life, by his own thoughts." Marcus Aurelius said, "Our life is what our thoughts make it. A single thought will neither make nor break a life, but a habit of thought will. We cannot think defeat and be victorious. We can do more for or against ourselves than any outside force." Each individual gets to choose their path. You may not have been initially responsible for the ways inflicted upon you, but now the present time is your responsibility. Each one has the ability to use all the infinite power of creation to live life in harmonious accord, and that, my friends, is within your grasp. The choice is yours. For those who feel that their lives could use a bit of a tune-up, I'll offer a very powerful tool for you to use. By changing one word in your vocabulary, you can begin to change your life. By changing this one word, a victim mentality way of thinking can transform a life thought of as out of control to a life that is totally within one's grasp and totally in one's command. By replacing one word with one other word that I'm about to share, you can invoke the awareness and power of the universe. Have I got your attention? I know right about now you're saying, so what's the word already, right? Does it sound too good to be true? It actually is a great truth and totally aligns with universal law. So here it is. Replace the word have with get. Instead of saying, I have to get up in the morning, say, I get to get up in the morning. I get to clean the house. I get to wash the car. Whenever the words have to come to mind, change them to get to. And this isn't pie in the sky thinking. This simple action will reprogram your brain from an entrapment state, a state of being a victim, to a state of freedom, gratitude, and abundance through choice. Your brain will actually rewire. These are proven facts. Maybe no one has ever said this to you before. So I'm going to say it to you. You're powerful beyond measure. I believe in you. If your beginning in this world was difficult, I'm so very sorry. The things that happened to you, how you were raised, wasn't your fault. You're not alone. You matter. And you're strong and resilient. And you're very, very brave. The events of the past did not destroy you. Don't let the memory of them steal your present or your future. You are a blessing to this world. You have the power of creation within you, and you get to choose how you want to use it. So I certainly encourage you to govern life by choosing carefully and wisely, not because you have to, but because you get to. God bless you.